Okay, we're starting. I'm speaking with Kevin Oconnor on September 27th. So Kevin, I'm familiar with your work and I've looked at some of your videos, but could you give me a brief overview or perhaps the elevator pitch of your business?
I try to work with technical professionals who have been promoted to lead teams of other technical professionals, frequently their former peers. So the specific area that I do most of my work, 90% of my work in, is with physicians who are going to become physician leaders, CEOs of hospitals, chief medical officers, vice presidents of medical affairs, physicians who are working in pharmaceutical companies who have to also influence both the commercial colleagues as well as the outside MDs, PhDs, and PharmDs. So that's primarily what I do. I also teach 6 classes at Loyola University in Chicago. And then the rest of my work is sort of spread out among other things, sometimes nurses, schools for the blind, and some other assorted groups. But most of my work is working with physician executives, and that started because I wanted to work with technical professionals.
And so your ideal audience would be like physician associations?
My ideal audience is a group of physicians, either who work in the same system, 20 to 30 people, or 60 to 100 people who are coming from all over the country to maybe work based in an association kind of organization, right?
Okay.
Now, occasionally it's coaching a particular physician who's in trouble. So sometimes they hire me because somebody's misbehaved or they're on the line. Or to hire a new doctor is about $1 million plus. So they don't. On the one hand, one of my doctors said, I said, if you were a nurse, you would have been fired a long time ago. And he said, well, yeah, but I'm a doctor.
Yeah.
And he was saying it out of arrogance, but the financial part of it is it's very expensive to replace doctors. So they try to do all they can to help them see the light. And so sometimes I do individual coaching in that regard.
Okay, so speaking about some of the different offerings, if you think of a pie chart of your speaking business revenue, what % is consulting, what % keynotes, what % training and workshops?
Let's see. I would say training and workshops would probably be in the 50% range. Consulting would probably be maybe in the 30 to 40% range. Just depends on the year because it does fluctuate. I don't do too many keynotes. Most of my work is either in an all-day format or a multi-day format. The shortest I do on a typical basis is maybe 2 or 2.5 hours, but usually I'm doing full-day workshops.
Okay, so I'm just going to read this so we have consistency across interviews. We're trying to study best practice as defined as having a CSP and a full-time speaking business whose revenues over the last 3 out of the last 5 years equals or exceeds $100,000 per year in gross revenue. Does that describe your business?
It does.
Okay. Did revenue from your speaking business during any of the last 10 years exceed $250,000 gross?
Yes.
Okay. And about when did it first exceed $250,000? What year?
Probably. When was 9/11? Was that 2001?
Yeah. No. Oh gosh. Can you believe it? I thought it was 2011, but yes, 2001.
2001, so probably around 1999.
Okay. 1999. All right. So just kind of going back in time a little bit, when did you get your first paid or unpaid speech?
My first paid speech was in 1970. I was speaking to teachers. told that there'd be 25 people who'd show up for a workshop on how to manage classroom behavior. And the day before, they called me and said there was a change in your registration. 2,500 people are going to show up for your
That's great.
tomorrow. So you're going to be at the Erie Crown Theater. So my first talk was at McCormick Place in the Erie Crown Theater.
That's great. I usually get the same advice, only in reverse. Okay. Okay. And how did you get? I'm assuming that was paid, right? You said it was paid. And how did you get that first paid speech?
I was teaching 3rd and 4th grade, and I was doing some evaluations of teachers and for the Archdiocese of Chicago. And the superintendent said, "Would you mind giving a talk at our, I think they call it a teacher resource day." And it was all the teachers in the Archdiocese of Chicago that would come together and go to workshops. And it was down at McCormick Place, and so I assumed I would have 25 people in the room. It turned out to be.
So your current employer. So you did this for your current employer.
Well, my current employer was a school, and the school was under the umbrella of the Archdiocese of Chicago. So the Archdiocese of Chicago was the client for that talk.
But we could say.
But I mean, yeah, it was part of the. It wasn't part of my work duties, but it was. They knew me from my teaching.
Okay, so it was an extension of your job.
Yes, probably.
Okay.
Yeah, you could say that.
Okay, all right. So I'm going to be skipping around a little on this question. Let me just see here. So when did you get your second paid speech? So if your first paid speech was 1970, right?
Yes.
And when was your second one?
Well, that's when a number of them started, because the people that saw me at that conference said, "Could you come and talk to our parent group in the evening?" So while I was teaching during the day, I taught 3rd and 4th grade. Then, Saint this and Saint that parish would say, "Can you come and give a talk to our parents about what you talked about to the teachers?" So that's when I started to do, quote, quote, part-time professional speaking in that regard.
So about how long did it take from your first speech to get your second speech? Was it pretty immediate, or?
It was pretty quick, maybe within a few months, because I think they went back and said he was funny and we liked him, and let's have him. And so I just was I didn't know about professional speaking at that time until that summer, when I needed a summer job, because, as you know, teachers work 9 months. So I got a job with the Environmental Protection Agency in Chicago through my contact who had hired me for the Archdiocese. Her brother was the training director, and she said, "He needs somebody to help him. Do you want to help him this summer?" So I worked for the Environmental Protection Agency in Chicago as the assistant to the training director. And what he did was he hired professional speakers to come and talk to the primarily African-American administrative assistants at the Environmental Protection Agency, because at the EPA at that time, you were either a scientist or you were an admin. There was nothing in between. So we knew the admins were not ever going to become PhDs or MDs, but we knew that there was a better job for them somewhere else. So he would hire professional speakers to come in to inspire them to think about going back to school, that there's another job for you. You don't have to be in a bipolar kind of environment. And so that's when I was first introduced to people, and this was the beginnings, I think, of the NSA at that time. And this guy, I said, "So these people make money giving talks?" And he said, "Yeah." He said, "That's all he does." The guy that he was hiring, Bill McGrain was the guy's name, from Cincinnati. And so then I met Bill, and then a few years later, when I was at St. Viator, I moved to a high school teaching, a counseling position. I hired Bill McGrain to come in and talk to our faculty, and then I got more and more familiar with the National Speakers Association. By that time, myself and Frank Bucaro, who's a member of NSA, formed a company, and we actively marketed ourselves to parent groups to give parent education, because he was teaching at a high school too at the time. And so we market this entity that essentially did what I had learned to do when I was teaching in grammar school.
And what year did you form that company about?
My hunch is that was maybe, let's see, 73, maybe 75.
Okay, and then so in 75 you were still working for the school district and you had this company on the side?
Yes.
Okay, and then when did you leave your real job?
I stayed, let's see, I taught in the grammar schools for about 3 years, or 4 years maybe. I stayed in high school for another 13 years. Frank left his full-time job about maybe 5 or 6 years before I did. And I guess I left that job when my first son was born, and that was in '83.
Wow. Okay.
Frank was already full-time at that time. He left his job prior to me doing that.
Okay, hold on. All right, but your partner, when did your partner go full-time? About 1980?
I wouldn't be surprised if that was true. Yeah, something like that. Yep.
Okay, that was good. Does he have a higher tolerance of risk than you, or just less expenses, or the kids go hungry?
Oh, he had just as many expenses. I think he was very confident that his specialty, which was business ethics, was a good thing to do at that time. He was getting more. More talks that were not educational and not education based. So he was getting a couple more corporate gigs here and there and everything. I introduced him to NSA. He went to NSA, became popular there, gave a couple of talks at NSA early in his career, which attracted the bureaus. And I think that's when he was able to kind of make that work a little faster. Meanwhile, I was going to school for my second master's degree, and I had a marriage and family counseling practice in addition to speaking and
oh my gosh,
counseling. So then I started gathering people into the practice, and so that I had the practice for about 25 years. And so when I left, I was really letting go of school, which was taking a lot of time, but I still had the practice, and I was teaching at the university, and then I was going to the university. So the income from school was probably the least part of my income, and we sat down in the family room one night and tried to figure out how many people do I need to see and how many talks should I give, and that's when we sort of made that jump.
So hold on, let's go back to that jump. So it was you and your wife?
So my wife and I sat down one night and said, so how many people do I need to see in a private practice to replicate my income from the school? And how secure are those referrals? And I'm still going to school at that time, and then I got asked to start teaching at the university when I was working on my third master's degree. So then that brought in a little income. That was mostly, though, for Loyola was important to me, so I liked being able to teach there. So the primary income at that point was my counseling practice, and then gradually over time the speaking continued.
So I'm just trying to figure out the revenue stream. So you had a counseling practice, you were at Loyola,
yes,
and you were a speaker.
Yes. So that's been pretty much my career. I'm always doing, Nito says the magic is in the mix, and so I'm always doing something that is related to one central theme, but I never do kind of one thing. I do a few things full time, but I don't do only one thing. Okay. So that's been constant since the beginning.
All right, and are you a tenured professor at Loyola?
No, I am a senior adjunct at Loyola, so I've been teaching there for 30 years.
Wow.
And
okay.
Senior adjunct means you don't have to go to faculty meetings, and sometimes get to pick what you want to teach, but it's an at-will position. So, I mean, every semester you get a contract for that semester. And but you're involved. You can be involved in committees if you want to be, but you're not required. So they asked me to go full-time actually last year, which only meant that I was going to teach a couple extra classes. You're not allowed to teach so many classes if you're an adjunct. They limit you. And they said, would you like to go full-time? And I said, well, that was interesting. They said, we'll give you insurance. I said, I don't need it. I'm on Medicare. That's better. And they said, but this would be great. I said, yeah. They said, now, the only problem is you have to attend faculty meetings every week, but we will let you out at the third hour of the meeting.
Oh, my gosh.
I said, that's what I said. And they said, and you can only have one outside activity per week. But Kevin, for you, we'll average that to 4 a month.
Yeah.
I said, well, I'm already doing about 112 a year, so that's a deal killer. And so is the faculty meet. So I still get to teach. I kind of set my schedule. I get to teach with a teaching partner that I like very much, and so but I can kind of schedule when I teach. So if they say, what day of the week do you want? So that's worked out very well. That is not a huge, as you can imagine, that is not a huge part of my income. But it's a huge part of my credibility when I teach doctors, because when they say he teaches at Loyola University in Chicago, then people immediately associate that with credibility at some level. I used to teach also at Columbia College, the Performing Arts School in Chicago, so that adds credibility as well. But I teach at Loyola because I like it very much, and students are great, and I teach on the undergraduate level and the graduate level.
And what do you teach?
I teach pastoral counseling, 3 classes of pastoral counseling, different classes, and then for the undergrads, these are older undergrads, so they're anybody over the age of 23 who's coming back for their bachelor's degree, and typically they're people in their 30s, 40s, and 50s who are coming for a bachelor's degree. They're working adults, and so I teach communications to them. So I teach conflict, organizational communications, small group communications, those kinds of courses.
Okay, and so going back to this, your experience in the educational market as it has to do with the speaking business. So what do you say about people who say you can't make money in education for speakers?
Well, I think some people are making money on, for example, the college circuit kind of thing. I don't do that, but I know speakers who do make money on that. I think they're recognized as an expert. They're engaging. You have to be, because you have coaches in the audience who are teachers, and coaches are very. They mostly are in the back of the room doing X's and O's with each other, So I think you have to be a very good speaker, but it's a great place to cut your teeth. So I think it's a great way to learn how people learn. I thought teaching 3rd and 4th grade really helped me do that. That when people say, how'd you learn to teach doctors? I say to them, I used to teach 3rd and 4th grade. And they usually laugh, and I say, I really think that's true, because you get to see how learning happens, because kids who are 8, 9, 10 haven't turned on you yet. So they're still pretty naive and open. So I think it's a great place to begin, and some people stay there because they really like it. I encourage speakers whenever I talk to them, if you can get to start teaching at a university or a community college, even one course, do it, because when you say I teach at, it raises, the audience pays a little bit more attention to that. It's sort of like when you say fewer than 700 people in the world have a CSP, they go, oh, really? That's interesting. So it raises your credibility a little bit more, and it helps you with the audiences. But I don't know how much money you can make nowadays in the educational market, but I know people who have combined it with other interests that they have and make a substantial they make a substantial living that way.
So what do they combine it with?
Well, a lot of the people I know are psychologists, so they combine it with their psychological practice or their counseling practice. They could combine it also